Hey guys, welcome back to the Max Spence Business Podcast. Today, I have a very special guest. But before I jump into that, if you guys like the content I'm putting out, please like, subscribe, leave a review. It helps out with the podcast and also the people coming on the show. So without further ado, today's guest is Tristan Pelletier. I don't know if I butchered your last name there, but
Close enough.
he's actually a former Canadian military veteran who served in the Canadian Special Operations Regiment. While serving in the military, Tristan built up a real estate portfolio, and then when he transitioned from Army to civilian life, became a very successful real estate agent. It's great having you on the show, Tristan.
Thanks, Max. Thanks for the invite.
Awesome. So why don't we jump into a little bit of an intro about, who you are and sort of where did you grow up and what got you into the military, and then going on to, CSOR and then, real estate.
Sure. So I live born and raised in Ottawa, Ontario. Both my parents, my mom and my dad, were military. So that's kind of where I got my whole military lead. My grandfather was, my great-grandfather was. So there's a lot of Pelletier family line of military family in there. So it was a natural progression for me. And then, so I went right out of high school, pretty much. I joined the military, went to Afghanistan in 2010. That was with the Reg Force. When I got back from that, I had friends in CSOR, so Canadian Special Operations Regiment, and they said, Tristan, you should really try out. So I gave it a go. At 21 years old, I had no idea what I was really getting into, but one foot in front of the next, and got it done. Flash forward 4 years later, about two more deployments after that with CSOR. And then, along the way, like you mentioned, Max, I was buying real estate. Actually, my first place I bought was 19 years old. And that really comes from my grandfather. He was also military, but he transitioned out of the military by building apartment buildings. That's what he built. He had built them from scratch in Belleville, Ontario, so right off CFB Trenton. And that's really where I got my path for transition. I kind of followed my grandfather's footsteps. And now my father and I are buying a lot of real estate together and working on many different projects at this time.
Wow, that's absolutely incredible, and I'm so excited to get into it on a deeper level into this podcast. But why don't we jump from the beginning? You come out of high school. During high school and growing up, was that sort of always the path you sort of knew in the back of your head? You're like, okay, I want to be army, like I want to be infantry in the military, or did you have anything else sort of planned, or like how did that sort of work?
Honestly, I really didn't have any plans to join the military. I probably had said out loud, I'll never join the military, something like that. But as you know, life, takes you different paths. My original intent was to become a police officer. But real estate was always there. Like real estate was always my primary driver. I loved real estate since a young age. And to be honest, when I bought my first place at 19, I had no idea really what I was doing. I just did it, right? Which is, 80% of anything is showing up, as they say, right? So that right out of high school, Afghanistan was happening, and I had the opportunity to go. And it kind of sounds weird when I say this, but I got lucky that I was able to go because the war at that time, like the tours that were, a little bit more, I would say dangerous at the time, was ending a little bit because it was the tail end of the mission. So yeah, I did that. I joined that, and then I liked it enough. I really, like I said, wanted to join the reserves at first to get experience and become a police officer. But I was good at the military. My friends were going overseas. They were signing up to go. I was with the Cameron Highlanders of Ottawa at the time. And I was like, you know what? I'm going to do this too. Back then I said, I'll make 50 grand for 8 months of service. So I was like, oh, that's awesome. Back then it was a lot of money for sure. And I took a lot of risks for those 8 months, but I came back and bought myself a $3,000 car and invested the rest in another property. So I wanted to make sure the risk I took when I was overseas was going to pay me for the rest of my life and set me up, right? Rather than blowing that money. It was too much risk to take to not, invest in myself pretty much.
Yeah, 100%. And yeah, and that's actually super interesting and awesome that you had this thinking at such a young age that you were like, all right, you understood that if you want to create like very, very passive wealth and, to create such a great, fortune, a lot of people go into real estate, and real estate's one of this right now is real estate's one of the best asset classes to create that. So jumping in, so the very interesting thing is because for people that maybe don't know about CSOR or the Canadian Special Operations Regiment, it is very, 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 probably one of the, I don't know, but probably one of the hardest things you've done in your life was getting into going through selection or something like that. It's very, very difficult to get in there. And I like that you were just sort of you you wanted to become a police officer, went to the regular, and then decided to go into CSOR from somebody that was like, previously saying that, I'm not really interested. So in you, there was already like that ability. So like in you, that was that ability that, you're gonna very ambitious guy. You're like, I'll put the work in, I'll put like, I'll get down and do it. And you became successful in it. So I want to jump now to actually, when did the idea pop into your head that like, let's go, train, start training for selection for CSOR? And then how did you actually go about doing it? Were you always naturally very fit, or did you actually have to train, running, tabbing and stuff like that, and all the other skills that you need to actually get through selection?
To be honest with you, I was never a big like a heavy workout guy in a sense where like I did weights and the typical things. But then when you try out for CSOR, they actually will, when you sign up, they will give you a workout program. And I just called it the program. It was a 90-day program that was very intense, but it was a very good progression. So the type of guy I am, I like plans. I love planning things, and I like to see it on paper. And I really love, they're like, hey, follow this. And if you could hit these landmarks on all of these, there's like race times, there was like rucksacking, all these things. You hit these landmarks. They said, with this, you should be able to fit enough to finish selection. The selection back then when I did it was 8 days. And I think it's always changing, but in those 8 days, you're really challenged, right? And selection really is about your grit and thinking when you're really tired, and pushing through and not quitting. So that's the biggest thing is, the old saying is, if you're going to quit in a controlled environment where it's training and you're like not going to die or pass away, very lightly or anything like that, if you're going to do that there and quit, you're going to quit when the time comes overseas when you really need to dig in. So that's how they see it. And that's a really good mentality to do. I think that people overthink a lot of things when it comes to selection. You just got to go do it and get in. And if it doesn't work out, you could try it again. If it doesn't work out again, it is what it is. You've done more than most people. And some people will never try. In the military world, everyone talks about, oh, I'm going to try out for special force. I'm going to go for it. And rarely people even try out. It's one of those things. So I give everybody credit for going for it, for no matter what the result is. And I truly believe that special forces people are just a piece of the bigger plan in the military. I'm a big believer that everybody in the military, no matter if you're special forces or if you're a cook, whatever happens there's a piece for you that's integral. And without you, the whole thing won't work out. That's just the way it is, right? If you can't eat, the guys in Afghanistan, I remember back in the day, he was working hard, very hard, 7 days a week to feed everybody in like plus 60 heat. That's a hard job to do for 8 months straight, right? So, and without that, you can't fuel the team, right? So, I went off track when it comes to the question, but that's how I really believe that. I don't think soft guys are supposed to feel inferior to everybody else. It's part of the bigger picture.
Yeah, and I really like that a lot. Is like, and that's sort of the same with a company as well. Like let's say you have the sales team, you have different parts and different components, and all of it is very hard. But you need people to do those jobs, right? And it all, like it all contributes to the engine of that one, company.
100%.
Like for the military, it's like that one military machine, getting everything turning and getting everything going forward. So actually, I want to jump into the mindset that you actually prepared yourself for, like going into this. Were you like, because it's a very difficult, like, to go through it, right? So it's like, when you were going, like, getting ready for it, were in the back of your mind, were you just like, I'm going through this and I'm getting through it no matter what? Like, can you actually talk about a bit about what was your mindset before actually going into this, selection course?
So I compare selection to a lot of business endeavors you want to do, because I didn't go to university. So the only thing I know is the military afterwards. So I said, what can I learn from the military? Well, like you mentioned, it's a big, well-oiled business. Really, it is. It's very hard to organize that many people to get the common goal done. But my mindset was, honestly, it was like, you know what? X amount of people do it per year. Like, why can't I? Like, why can't I be that guy that does it? Because people do. And when you're saying, when you're telling people, hey, I'm going to try out for special forces, it's so funny because everyone's like, oh man, whoa, my buddy, he failed day 3 or whatever. He got pulled off. Oh, it's hard. I'm not a runner. Like, oh, Tristan, you got to run, you got to be a better runner, things like that. Cause I'm a bigger guy. And you get all these things, people, negative energy telling you all these things. But then you ask the guys that are in the unit, you're like, you think I can get this done? They're like, yeah, you can do it. Right. So we tend to listen as humans to everybody else, but why don't you listen to the people that are in, that have been successful? Because a lot of people are negative and they just, will tell you can't because they can't either. So my mentality, I stopped kind of listening to the noise and just honed into my own, what I can control myself. And honestly, the less you know about selection, the better it is. You just roll with the punches, right? So the only piece of advice I got from a friend that was already in says, just don't quit. That's what he told me. Don't quit. Just don't quit. Keep going and do the best you can to everything that's presented to you, right? I was on the, at one point I was doing selections as when I was already in. So I was passing guys through selection all the time. And you see, when you're tired and you're wet and you're hungry, you can't fake who you are. It comes out. You can't think, oh, I'm gonna be someone else. Like, no, your true person comes out, and that's also part of what selection is going to do, is going to pull out your true personality so they can see it. And it's clear as day. Trust me, when you're tired, you might think you're hiding something, but when I was on the other end of it, I was looking at guys and I'm like, oh, these guys are tired, and I can see the truth behind it, right? So to answer your question, the mindset is follow the direction, like listen to the right people, and honestly, just don't listen to the noise. And that's the same thing that the mentality you have to have in business overall, is listen to the right people, right? Like, why are we listening to your aunt, uncle that has never invested in real estate, and they're telling you, oh, tenants can give you a hard time? That's fear driven advice. So after I got the mentality, that's the soft mentality overall, is there's no task too big, and you have to be brave enough to do it. But also, okay, guys, this is the plan. This is what we need to do. And then the planning comes out. It's all about planning. It really is. So what's our assessment? Like, I wasn't an officer, but I was part of the planning process, especially when you are in the special forces. Everybody has a piece of planning. Versus Green Army, it's a lot more, you listen to what your officer says, or your superiors, and you do that job really well, and you're responsible for that job. Versus what they call special forces is bottom up planning. Sometimes, like, guys, this is the problem, so we all get together. But obviously, an officer has the final word on what's going to happen, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah. And one thing I really love about that is, like, what you're saying is listening to the right people. And that is, like, in itself is such a great piece of advice, because anytime, like, you want to go do something, let's say go start a business in whatever, let's say it's social media or it's real estate or it's finance or whatever it is, you'll have a lot of people, maybe it's family, it's friends, that are telling you, oh, you won't be able to do it, or, like, you have to deal with these problems. And it's all very negative, like you said. Instead, like, block those out and just listen to the people that have actually done it. Like, and that's the first, and I've interviewed another guy called Hayden Cash, and I don't know if you're familiar with him or heard him at all. He does social media, and he does, like, ads and stuff like that. And he had a very, very good viewpoint on it, was that, like, like, you have to, like, when it becomes like, when you're wanting to ask somebody, like, how they sort of did it or something like that, you ask the people that have already done it, right? If somebody's already done it, then they can then you give them permission to actually tell you, and actually you can listen to their advice, right? Because there's no point, giving permission to somebody else, to tell you about, how to do it, and they've never done it in their life, right? So if you give permission to somebody who's already done it, been through it, done it, but then you also have to take into, consideration that you're not actually them. You're not the same DNA. You're not the same build as them. So what worked for them is not going to work for you 100%. So you can take their advice, right, but you need to take it with a grain of salt. And that's, like, that was his process and mentality of when he was, like, he's building his company and stuff like that, and then taking advice. And that's what I really love about that piece of advice. What you were saying is, like, ask the people that have already done it. Don't be, block out the people, like you were saying, for real estate. Let's say if you want to go buy a rental property, and, you have friends telling you, oh, you're going to lose all your money in it. Listen to somebody who's actually done it. And, such as yourself, you're a real estate agent who's actually owns property, and you've been on the side as, actually just an investor, and also as a real estate agent. So you can understand both sides of it, right? So listening to somebody such as yourself is going to be a great piece of advice. So I want to talk now, making that transition from, the military, with the mindset over the years, you probably have built up, a mindset of like, how to deal with stress, how to deal with anxiety, how to deal with all these emotions. And there's similarities to when you go off and start your own business. There's a lot of fear because, maybe you have kids, maybe you have a wife, maybe you have stuff you have to like, friends or family or whatever you have to support. So making that jump can be very scary. So how did you actually build up that mental attitude? Was it like during in the army, or is it something that you've always sort of had?
So the question was what was my mindset when I left the military, transition out, or the?
Sort of. I want to. Yeah. Sorry, there. I sort of put two together, but more building on the mindset within the army, right? Like, how did you something that somebody can use, right? For how you deal with stress, how you deal with anxiety, how you deal
Okay.
with these emotions, being in, or when you need to take a leap of faith and to do something, right? Like, how do you sort of process that?
hmm So I think people can alleviate a lot of stress and anxiety by doing a lot of planning, and I think people skip that step a lot. And I'm getting better at it as I go forward. There's a lot of unknowns in business, but putting things on paper is really big. Having a good realistic plan of your transition. So if you talk about, I don't know if you know this, Max, but there's a lot of issues with military people leaving the military. And I think, I personally think, and I could be, rubbing some sensitive spots here, but people leave the military, they're really stressed and like, oh, I have PTSD from the things I've experienced. And people do legitimately have PTSD, and I know that. But I tell you something right now, I went through a lot of stress and stressful environments in the special forces, and I tested my fortitude and my grit many, many times. And there's a lot of unknowns in the military. But I was very stressed when I left the military, okay, because I left that cocoon and took a leap of faith. So to revert back a little bit, the military is good at pushing you, even if you don't want to be. So you're saying, hey, for example, a jump course, like to get your wings. It's a course that not many people want to do because you're landing really hard and get really injured if it happens if you don't jump really well. So the military is getting going, hey, you're doing this, and you're like, oh, I don't want to. Like, well, it doesn't matter. You're gonna go do it. And then you have that fear, that anxiety before, and you get in your head a little bit. And guess what? You do it, and you're like, wow, that's the things from the past, and you have a lot of pride looking back in those things. And the military is also very good at reminding you of the things you've accomplished, medals, courses, hard courses. You have it on your badge, you have your uniform. You're proud to say you did that, and it reminds you of that. So all these things that that you're leaving the military and you don't have that environment anymore for you. You don't have anyone pushing you to say you're going to go do this. Well, I'm scared. I don't want to do it. It's only you saying no and yes to that, right? And also, you don't remember the things you accomplished when you left the military because you don't have those, hey, good job, here's a medal kind of thing anymore, right? So you have to create that by yourself. So a lot of people leave the military when they're stressed and they're Tristan, I want to do this business and so on and so forth. It's like, okay, well, when you did an operation in the military, what did you do? This is our task, and these are the things we have to get done. Yeah, here there's an enemy component, right? The enemy of what they're doing, but it's not like that anymore. The enemy is the unknowns of getting to the plan. So when it comes to the real estate investing or developing, you can make assumptions. You can start with your end goal, and like there's a tons of things in between to do, but you do your risk analysis, and that will reduce your stress and anxiety. The reason why people are stressed and anxious, I think, when they leave the military is because they don't have someone building that box for them anymore. And it's important because you've been trained to understand that box and live with that box. You have to create it for yourself, right? But no one's doing it for you anymore. So when I kind of changed my mindset to, okay, I understand and like these things the military gave me, I want to recreate them in my world. That's what I'm doing. So it really helped me in my stress anxiety when it came to leaving the military, right? The mindset before that during the military is you're special excuse me in the special forces, you're grinding every day. Take it one day at a time, and it seems like a long journey. The special forces course after you do selection is 8 months to a year. They change it. It's a long 8 months. It really, really is. But you take it one day at a time, one foot in front of the other. That's the only thing you can do, right? Don't think of the big picture. Take one step at a time.
Yeah, yeah, and I sort of agree with that a lot. Is like, and that's what I've seen from the military is like, you have this, or like, it's very similar to like somebody that spends 10 years in a profession, it's like it's ingrained into your purpose, and also your identity as well, right? Like when you're in the military, you're like, this is who I am. I'm this, let's say special operations, or I'm an engineer, or I'm infantry, right? And that's like, you have the mission that's given to you, and then you work your ass off. And everybody I find in the military can work, like they work their ass off like crazy, and they have no problem like putting their head down and doing it, right? And they have like, and I wonder like why not a lot more military people go off to start businesses, because I'm thinking like these, like all of them would be so successful in it because they understand how to put in the work. Like like you've probably been up for days just working, grinding, going. And like you were saying, like I think that's a really good point, is like you miss, like when you come out, it's like you don't have a purpose anymore, right? It's like you don't have a mission anymore of what you need to go and accomplish, and it's not given to you. You have to create your own, right? And then also it's like there's not like a pressure, like maybe there's a financial pressure, but there's not a pressure of somebody that you're going to let down, right? You can like it's much easier to let down yourself than letting somebody else down, right? So like that's
Right.
a pressure that you have in the army, is like you don't want to let down your teammates, you don't want to let down your friends. Whereas when you leave, you don't have that pressure to there's no teammates, because when you're starting your business, you're just by yourself, right? And you can
Yeah.
Slack or something. That's my thought process. I don't know if that's if you agree with that, or if you actually have something
100%.
else that you'd like to add to that.
Yeah, I'm going to add to that because I think it's important. If anyone military is going to listen, is I think a lot about what I can teach other people, and it's one of my big life goals is to help people transition from military to business. So anyone that does real estate, anyone that's listening that does mortgages, like people reach out to me all the time and say, Tristan, I'm transitioning out. What are your thoughts? And I'm more than happy to help everybody, because without the military, I wouldn't be here today. So I owe a lot to the military. In high school, I was a guy that smoked weed all the time, whatever. And it changed my life. It really did. So I want to pay it back. But also the people in the military, firefighters, police, paramedics, nurses. My mom was a nurse for a very long time. All these people are givers. They give. I mean, you sign the dotted line, you're ready to give your life for other people you don't even know. Okay. So that alone, you're categorizing someone that's a giver. And then you leave that world, and then you realize, unfortunately, the capitalism world, people are takers. They take, and they take. They want to take more and more and more. It's the dark side of the world a little bit, and it's just the way it is. So I think people that are in the military, my first year in real estate especially, like, whoa, that guy took advantage of me, or that guy wasted all my time, or like I was giving it all. And you get surprised by that because you spend 5 years with people around you that you can trust. If you're in the military and I was in the military and you say, Tristan, this is what's happening, or whatever it is, I'm not in my head going, is this guy misguiding me? It's not a factor in my head. So I think that's a big transition piece for anyone that's in a first not for got front line, I guess, giving themselves. Is it's your time, you reap the benefits. You've protected a free world for years, right? Freedom, it's not free, right? You've done it. It's time for you to reap the benefits from those things. And one of those benefits from a free world, free society, is capitalism, and is for you to take your piece and make some money. And that's okay to do. It's hard for me to say it out loud. It really is, because I'm so used to giving myself, and I do that to my clients. Like I give a lot of my time to my clients, and they appreciate that from me. So you can build a business by giving, but remember, take your piece too, protect yourself too, and be a little bit more selfish now. It's okay to do that. It's okay to do that at this point in your career. Okay.
Yeah, and I very much agree with that. Is like, if you're not able to financially or whatever look after yourself first, then how can you go off and reallocate those resources to help other people? Whether that's
Right.
charity events, or whether that's through your business, a coaching business, or whether that's through like just having coffees with people that are in a situation where they're making the transition, and you now have the ability to actually take that coffee meeting, because you don't have to be working at that certain time, right? So you're able to take that coffee meeting because you're secure financially, to have like a 30 or 40 or an hour meeting to give all your advice to somebody else, and then they can take that, and then they can give that to somebody else. So yeah, like I agree with that a lot.
And real estate, I had 4 properties before I left the military, and it's not like a huge amount, but it was good enough for me to leave and know that I have that nest egg as a backup, right? You don't want to leave the military with $0 and have that stress, because it's a good salary. Like, it's a decent salary that's paying you, and it's consistent, and there's a pension tied to it and all these things like that. But, you know, if you're going to be there for the rest of your life, that's fine. I knew I didn't want to be there for the rest of my life. Like, I knew I wanted to put my time in. It was an extremely rewarding job, fun at times, challenging at times. Some of the best parts of my life, for sure. Some of the worst times of my life too. But all that to say is, I'm here today. I'm extremely happy with what I did in the past. But now I really want to concentrate on, my business is doing really well. I want to keep doing that, but I want to inspire people that are in the military or first responders, whoever, the list I just named, that you can leave and take your piece. Okay, it's okay to do that. It's not a bad thing. Okay, because people think they think it's bad. They think it's bad to put themselves in front of people, and get your piece of the pie. It's not. It's okay to do it.
No, 100%. And like, that's like, I agree with that more than anything. Is like, yeah, you spent all those years giving, like you were saying, and it's like making that transition to actually, go out and, take a piece of the pie. It's like, that's actually huge. Cause like, when you are able to take a piece of that pie and then give, and then, like, let's times that by 4 or whatever, you're able to give so much more. You're able to give
That's
so
right.
much more back to the community. You're able to give so much more back to people. And, real estate developing, a lot of people might hate, real estate developing because, they're building these big buildings and they're super, they're all really wealthy. The majority of real estate investors, like the small real estate investors that maybe own a couple properties, they're not like super, super wealthy. And, but they have a key purpose in society of building very, very good places, very good places for people to rent. Let's say you're building an apartment building, like that's a huge key, is like building somewhere for people to live. Like that's important.
And I agree. Like, there's always going to be, I get it. Like, I always try to put myself in someone else's shoes. I have my house. I have this beautiful house, and right behind me, something's going to get built, and it's going to be this huge tower. I understand that I don't like it. I understand all those factors, but you got to realize there's, if there's a 20 unit building, there's 20 people looking to live like something like that. And in Ottawa, especially, Max, are you living in Ottawa?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, you're in Ottawa. So, as you know, the market went up quite a bit this year. Like 20% since last year, about like 30% overall in the last couple of years. Well, there's a lot of people that need apartment buildings now because they can't afford to live anywhere else. So one person's unhappy because the value of their property is going down. Well, guess what? You already have a house. You already have a place you're living. There's 20 people maybe waiting for this apartment to be built. So there's all these factors and considerations to come. Yeah, developers can definitely push the limit and fight communities. I've been there before, where like I've went up against a community association, and it's difficult to do because it's not my intent to make anyone upset. It's my intent to add value to the community, and by adding value to anyone business, you're going to get paid. That's how you make money in business overall. You're adding value to people's lives or other businesses or so on and so forth. So those projects are being rented and those people are happy today.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. And I agree with you, is like, and if developers aren't building those rental buildings, then, it's just going to increase the value of rental units, and it's going to push so many people out of, actually buildings that are built for rent, like built for actually to be rent, and pushed you. And then they get pushed into like, maybe not the best, places to be living, maybe buildings that weren't built to actually house rental, to actually house rental units, right? And then that's the other side, a little bit of the other side of real estate that a lot of people see, and a lot of people like to focus on the negative parts of everything. Like, there's a lot of good that developers are doing in Ottawa and across the world, of building fantastic communities for people to live in, and it's absolutely amazing, right? So I want to now transition to you leave the army, and what was that like? You had did you say you had 4 properties already?
Yeah. So when I left the military, I had 4 properties. Yeah.
Okay.
Properties.
And then, so you made that transition. What made you go down the route of getting your real estate license, going into real estate, or going into something else? Maybe
So
business or something.
yeah, so I have 2 businesses right now. One I don't talk about as much because it's a startup. It's actually a military product I'm building. That I have a partner that the inventor of the product. It's an ammunition management system with the 5.56. So you have to really understand how ammunition is delivered to end users, which is like where I was doing before. So I'm building a better system for that. That's one of my businesses. one of the reasons I left the military is because I wanted to expand on that business a little bit more. And when you're in the military, you're trying to sell to the military, it's never really a good thing. To be honest, there's a lot of conflict there. But for the real estate aspect, one of my best friends, I was giving him so many referrals for military relocation, right? And just referral to referral. And he goes, and he knew I was a little bit over the military. I was living in Petawawa. I'm not a country guy. I like living in the city. And he's like, you could make a living out of this. You could join my team. Like, I was on this team for a while, and he showed me the ropes. And I built my business really around the military. So people relocating in and out of Ottawa, big part of my business. Selmar Real Estate Group, that's what we specialize in, is relocation. And I personally do a lot of investments as well. And we just relocate people within Ottawa. We have a good system. We just work with a lot of integrity, and all the things I learned from the military in the special forces, all those things, that mentality I bring to the table in my real estate business. So it works really well. I talk about that a lot. I'm passionate about real estate. I really like what I do. And I look for the bottom line often my clients. I know not everyday buyer, if you're buying a townhouse to live in, people are not really, it's not an investment, but it is. Like, you shouldn't, a real estate asset, often, if you look at 40 years down the line, your kids are looking at, oh, mom and dad's house. Often that's what's left, is mom and dad's house. So my job as a realtor is to tell you what your risk is on the way in and what to expect on the way out. If you're buying a property that no one wants to buy in a very hot market, like, why are we buying it? What's wrong with it, right? So I say no more than say yes, often than my clients, and they appreciate that from me. And it's a fun job, rewarding. It's challenging as well.
Yeah, and that's fully understandable. Like, I was a real estate agent before getting out of it, but
Okay.
it's a very tough job. Like, it's not like you're competing against like lots and lots of different people. You're competing with a lot of other agents, and it really comes down to like really communicate your communicational skills as a person, and being able to convey what your capabilities are and your value to somebody, because the majority of people, same thing as probably developers, people have a negative outlook sometimes towards real estate agents, like, oh, they're just trying to screw me over. And it's like, no, like, a real estate agent's actually going to really help you pick that right property in that right area, because they understand the value of that area, and also they're going to help you sell that property because they're going to know what the value is, and they're going to be able to understand how to negotiate that deal to get you the best price for it. So there is a need for them. If there wasn't like, if there was no need, there wouldn't be any real estate agents. There's still lots of real estate agents around because there's still a very, very big need for them, right? So
Yeah.
I want to touch on now is, you're also an investor as well. So are you currently, guys, building any apartment buildings, or multifamily or houses? I mean, like, single family houses. What's sort of your process right now with that?
So I recently last year I sold a lot of my properties because I wanted to change my strategy. I was buying a lot of condos and townhouses because I was away overseas a lot. I remember being in Africa, but one of the missions I was in, I was filling one of my units via, uh, calls or whatever, so that was a little bit easier for me to manage because there was condos and townhouses, one-off houses. So I sold those. I really want to bulk up my investments to do a little bit bigger plays. And, in real estate, there's passive investors and there's active investors. So active investors buy something, improve it, and pull their cash out and maybe sell it to a passive investor. And that's okay. It's okay to be a passive investor. It works really well as long as you're doing one or the other, versus nothing at all. So I liquid a lot of my assets. I bought with partners, mind you, 3 other properties. We all converted them to duplexes. But what's good for those is we're accumulating these lots up in order to build. So I have worked on a few development projects as a passive partner, but I haven't built anything, let's just say myself for the time being, just to be clear on that. So the phase we're in right now with these partners is we're accumulating lots and making them cash flowing properties as we're waiting to get a few in a row, basically. So the zoning is right. It's R5 zoning. So if you know anything about R5, it's the highest density you can get in a residential in Ottawa. And they're all 66 by roughly 120 feet. So they're big lots. We could build on one of them right away. We have the plans to do it, but we're just saying, you know what, let's be patient. They're all cash flowing really well. And we tried to make it as efficient as possible in terms of adding the in-law suites downstairs, because we don't want to spend, too much money for something we're going to destroy. So we're making that really lean, and we're just waiting for basically our neighbors to sell. And once the neighbors sell, we're going to go for it. So these guys I'm with, this is my first time doing something with partners. I like it. The partners are good. It can be challenging in different ways because I am someone that likes to have control, and you don't always have the control. So it's good, mostly good, but it can be difficult to do those things. So what we're trying to do is build, if we get this one in a row, we get three, we could probably build a 6-story building with underground parking right by the LRT. So one of the phases of the LRT, this one's specifically is in Orleans, east of Ottawa, which in my opinion needs more apartment buildings. There's not many rentals there. Most people own their houses there, but that's going to change the demographic of who's going to own property. Ottawa used to be a city that everyone's going to buy something and own. It was very easy, not very easy, but it was more accessible. But now it's getting where like your landmark is $500,000 for something that's like fairly nice. That's hard for people to reach these days, right? So rentals are going to get really expensive. Rentals are going to be really popular. There's tons of developers though building rental apartments right now. RioCan had just built the one on Blair, and they said in an article is one of the best projects ever. Also, I think one of their first residential projects. So I don't know if you know what I'm talking about. They had flattened these commercial buildings that weren't leasing anymore, and now they're building these 3 huge towers right by the Blair LRT. So it's impressive. Obviously, it's a huge company, but it's impressive to see how it's shifting, where large companies are saying, I'm getting into residential. Because, most of the time residential people are saying it's the easier aspect of the business and they don't want to deal. But I really like residential because it's here to stay, first of all. COVID could change how people want to live a little bit, but it's here to stay, residential sales, and you just got to make sure you have a good product and you have an aspect of building a relationship with your tenants, which I do like. If you treat them with respect, they will treat you with respect. In my cases, in the 10 years of rental properties I've owned, I've never taken vacancy. I've never had a huge issue, like a nightmare tenant, because I do the vetting in the first place, right? Like a lot of people skip those steps to get excited about money. That's the most important aspect too. So I got a little bit off track with your question, but yeah, we're building apartment buildings down the hill in Orleans near the LRT. That's our play right now.
Okay, awesome. And I really like that you guys, a lot of people maybe when they want to get into real estate development, they don't have a lot of patience with it and they rush into it. You guys, you guys are patient. You guys are, taking your time, and you guys, know exactly what you want to build out, right? And when you guys actually complete, like that's going to be a very, very high valued property because of the LRT. And also Orleans, this is from my own perspective, but I believe Orleans is expanding quite a bit just because it's, it's pretty close to downtown Ottawa and it's not as expensive as the West, right? So I feel like a lot of people are starting to move into it a bit. So sorry, did you want to add something?
It's also the only suburb in Ottawa currently that's getting the LRT. There's other phases coming in to the Canada, but we're the only one that has the LRT that's being built right now. So that's huge for Orleans, and we just need in my opinion, a better business hub. Canada has tech, which really helps them. But if we had something in the east, it'd be really good. Honestly, I like Orleans. It's a clean place. It's nice and it's friendly. French as well.
Awesome. So I now want to jump into to sort of get like more of an advice point. What advice would you have for somebody who's actually currently in the military right now, who's maybe listening to this podcast and they're wanting to build real estate? How are you able to do that? Like they might be thinking like, how is this guy able to, be buying these properties, and if they're going on deployments and manage all that, like what systems did you put in place to actually do that?
Well, the first thing I'll say about that is that realize how valuable you are in the military, as in to the eyes of the lenders. Lenders love salary-based people, right? I can buy a property for 3 years after because I was an independent contractor in the eyes of CRA. So it was a little bit unknown in my business. So the military also, if you do it right, and it depends where you are in your life. I was living lean. My rent was $110 a month, okay, to live on the base, but I lived in a little tiny room. I sacrificed a lot to know my exit. I think of the future all the time. So if anyone's listening, just say, Military might not last forever. And even if you want it to last forever, you can get injured and it won't last forever. And yes, the military will pay you for your injury, so on and so forth. But do yourself a favor, buy assets that are going to pay you and help your transition if you're going to get out, right? So I mentioned earlier in the podcast, I made $50,000 going to Afghanistan. And I remember this like it was yesterday. Both me and this other guy did the exact same job, exact same amount of money. We're standing outside of the barracks and he's talking. He's like, look at my new car. He spent $45,000 on this beautiful Dodge Challenger. And I bought myself a $3,000 used car. And I said to myself, you know, this guy spent 8 months of his life risking every day, you know, your life. And we had a lot of risk out there. And you're going to buy yourself a car that's right off the lot, just lost a bunch of assets versus that 50 grand that I had put into real estate, you know, 10 years later had paid me like 250, which is a huge plus when, especially when I left the military, to know I had those assets. Right. So, don't be gullible. Don't be gullible. It's not the right word. Don't think it's going to last forever because it might not. And even if it does last forever, buy real estate assets. Like honestly, I'm such a believer in real estate. If you need property management, they're out there. It's a cost. If you have a spouse, get them involved. If they're back at home, if you can handle all those things, there's different families that need more help around the house. But yeah, that's what I would say is like, don't think it'll last forever. It might not. I never thought it would for me. And if it's not going to last forever, think about what you want to do next. But real estate investing, regardless of transition, is something that people should have in their portfolio. It should be part of your portfolio. It shouldn't just be RSPs, stocks. I started playing around with stocks a little bit more this year, and I do like it. But real estate is smooth and steady, wins the race mostly, right?
Yeah.
And you're going to win. You know, if you own a $500,000 townhouse, let's just say, and it's renting, it's paying for itself. Well, in 30 years from now, even if the value's never moved up, you have 500 grand. You know, that's a huge bonus, and it pays you, you know, every year. You're paying tax every year on the investment. You know, stocks feel like, oh, I made 10 grand today. Like, did you sell that stock? No.
Yeah.
Well, it can go down, right? It's unrealized. So I get all those things, and like people, the stock market guys will be like, real estate's too much lag, and I get that you can't move as quick, but balance both out. So you can live really lean in the military. Going back to that, you can live lean. If you go anywhere outside of for training, which you train a lot, you're paid. All your food's paid. You get extra pay. Sometimes if it's overseas, if it's dangerous, it's tax-free. So there are huge benefits you can pull out of the military if you have a good budget and you're realistic. Don't overblow your budget on things that, you know, don't pay you. Spend the money on the things that pay you, and that will really ease your transition. Definitely will. I was happy I did it.
Yeah, 100%. And that's a good piece of advice. And like in the military, you're able to save so much money, right? Because it's like you don't have, because the majority of, like, let's say if you're living on base, most I know for Britain, when you live on base, like, you know, the majority of the food is really, really cheap compared to going out and buying it somewhere. And also where you live, it's very, very cheap. It's probably the same in Canada as well. But you know, you're able to cut your expenses so low that you just wouldn't be able to do if you were just outside in civilian life. You know, like,
Right.
you know, if you had to rent somewhere, you probably couldn't rent it the same type of quality building for the price you're getting in the military as well, right? And then also is like, if you're able to put that money into real estate or put that into stocks, and this is the one thing I've sort of realized is that like the stock, like the stock market is really, really good. It's just like, it's very like it's very easy to become emotional because you check, you know, it's so easy to check your stock, right? It's so easy to just pull up and say, oh, you know, you invested in Tesla, or you invested in Amazon, or whatever, right? And you see it's gone up, and then you're excited because it's gone up, and then when, you know, 2 days later it goes down a bit, and then you're upset because it went down, right? Whereas with real estate, it's like you're much more like long-term plan, right? Like, you know, nobody's giving you an assessment every single day being like, this is the value of your property. This is the value of your property. It's gone up a bit because of this. It's gone down a bit because of this. And you don't have that tied to emotion. So you're able to just put money in, you know, get it rented, set it, and sort of just leave it and wait. And it's not a huge stress to have completely, you know, well, there is stress with it, but you know, you don't have that emotional stress of like looking at stocks. That's the point I'm trying to get across.
Yeah, I agree with you 100%. It's like I can look at my stock, oh, it's not going great today, and I can affect the rest of your day. Real estate, you're running a business though, like it's an investment, but you're running a business. And that's why I don't like sometimes some people say, oh, it's a pure passive investment. It's not. It's like you're involved and you're actually getting paid every month to do that job, to provide a space to someone that's safe and clean and and has good standards. So, and you're paying taxes every year on that income. So there's two components. There's the investment that you're getting paid every month and you should be cash flowing, and that's making you money along the way. If you call your realtor and say, Tristan, how's my investment doing? I say, oh, it's tough right now. It's bad. Okay, well, you don't sell. You just wait, right? But you're getting paid along the way. Versus sometimes I think like a stock, you're hoping it goes back up because you're negative. And then the decision you need to make in a stock is often, do I cut my losses? Do I let go? So real estate, you can front load that and say, okay, if I buy this property, these are my costs. They're all in at 1,500 and I can rent it for 17. As long as that person stays in that house and pays me $1,700 a month, can my investment remain afloat? And yes, things can happen in markets. Markets can shift, and I get that. There's oversupply sometimes, but for the most times, if you keep that person happy and they're happy to stay there, you're good to go, and you can sell. There's tons of things we could talk about on this podcast, and investments that are real estate investments that are very leveraged. You can refinance and buy something else. I did that 3 times, my first 3 properties. I refinanced my first and made money. It wasn't complicated and I didn't really know what I was doing, but I'm a really big believer just doing it. Don't let yourself get inside your head. Go for it and it will work out, but you got to work hard at it. You can't be can't be halfway into something.
Yeah, 100% again, man. Yeah, it very much is a business. And like you were saying, it's different, right, from stocks and real estate, but both of them have their benefits. And if you take the time to actually learn how to do both of them, they can, provide you with a lot of wealth. So I know we're coming to the end here. What like on one last note, is there anything else that you want to add? Any bits of piece of advice you want to add before we wrap up here at all?
If you're leaving the military, just we're talking about the military specifically, just realize there's a lot of communities out there and business owners. I noticed that I was looking at your podcast. You had Bruce Linton, right? Former CEO of oh my God, I'm blanking right now, Kennedy. But he went to our 3V event. Trouble Victor is a military networking group. It's made for current members and ex-members. And this is the first place I went to. And that will help your transition. And you got to realize that people like Bruce Linton, they want to support military. They respect what people do in the military and they're out there. But don't be scared. Don't be worried to ask. Like you, Max, you're good at this. You go and you ask people to be on podcasts, and everyone thinks in their head, oh, these big business people, they're rich and they don't want to, they don't want to talk to me. They do. They want to spread the knowledge. And the most successful people that I admire the most are very, very humble, and they just, money isn't what makes them, right? It's what they do with the money and what the things they can give back as value to the community. And those people are out there, right? So seek those people, seek those groups. True Patriot Love, Canada Company. These are all places that you can go to, and there's resources. Prince's Operation Entrepreneur. I've went through all of these places. I'm mostly in 3V and POE. That's the things that I've done. But exercise those resources for you. Ask the right questions. Be bold, because you already were bold in the military. Okay, you put your life on the line. There's nothing else that's going to be higher risk than your life. Okay. Yeah. The pride and ego can feel like it'll be a higher risk because when you fail, it sucks, the hard pill to swallow. But you put your life on the line for your country, reap the benefits from a free country, and don't be scared to receive at this point of your life.
Yeah, and I love that a lot. Is like the like for somebody like in that sort of position, that they should have no, like, it might be a very nerve-wracking to reach out, but you should have no nerves or anything like that to go reach out to somebody, to go talk to them, to go get a coffee meeting from a CEO of a company or anything like that. What you've accomplished in the military is so much, and people respect that. And if people aren't, if they're not somebody that respects that, then you probably don't want to be doing business with that type of person, for a multitude of reasons. But yeah, like reaching out, to have no nervous, and that's something that I noticed for me. It was like when I first started reaching out to people like Bruce Linton and Steve Cody and all these people, and such, people such as yourself, it can be a little bit nerve wracking, but it's like, once you do it a couple times, on the 100th time, it literally does not matter anymore. Like literally, it's like the same thing like when you're probably like the majority of people being in the army is like, when you first do something, you're really like nervous and you're anxious and there's so much stress. By the sixth, let's say for shooting or something, probably the first time you're shooting a gun, you're probably a little bit nervous for it. But then, after, the 100th time shooting it, it's like second nature to you, right? It's like nothing's
100%.
like, same thing with riding a bike. You're able to learn how to do it.
And you got to know that. You got to know that when you're growing and you're expanding, you're going to feel like you don't want to. You're going to feel that. So if I told you that's the norm, that all these people we mentioned that are successful have gone through those feelings, then it's normal. They just receive those feelings, understand them. And to end this on a, if you want to end this anywhere, one thing I'd say too is don't be shy to reach out for help for your mental health. Okay, we in military we're very strong people. We don't want to reach out for help all the time, and I get it. But I had to shift the way I thought and communicated with people, because in the military is very direct communication. But you can't always do that. Okay, and outside the military, and the military, most people in the military are the same, or mostly the same-ish people. Outside world, there's tons of different types of people, and it's a beautiful thing. You have to understand how to communicate different types of people. So understand that you may come off a certain way, and I did. I think in the first 6 months of my career, and I shifted my mentality, and I'm really successful because of that. Right.
Awesome. So, I think that's a great place to leave this episode. Where can people actually find out more about, your business, your other business as well? And also if they want to reach out and, maybe, talk to you for, 15 minutes or ask you some questions.
Yeah. So you can reach out to me on my LinkedIn account, Tristan Pelletier. I'm not huge on Twitter and some Instagram or anything like that. But if you want to reach out to me, you can email me at Tristan, Tristan at Selmar Group, SELMAR, the word group.com. And I'll do this all the time. I take calls all the time. And if you need help, anything at all, reach out.
Awesome. Well, thank you again, Tristan, for coming on the show.
Hey, I appreciate it, Max.